It's my first time here. I was here listening to a lot of story, but it's the first time telling one. About 2 summers ago, on a Saturday morning, I was on a regular phone call with my parents who live halfway across the globe, 12 hours time difference, and we were talking about like how you're getting on, how do I eat, how's my work, when you're going to get your PhD, where's your girlfriend, and when you're going to give me a grandchildren. You know, typical Asian parent stuff. So at the end of the telephone call, my dad says, before you hang up, I need to let you know something. I said, whoa, it sounds serious. What's up? And he told me Uncle A died. I paused for a moment, and I said, oh, okay. Then I hang up the phone. I wasn't sad. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't anything. Because Uncle A is a family friend who I haven't seen in about 15 years. And but then I started to reminisce a little bit about what is going on and who he was and who he was to me. And I realized, like, all of my childhood story cannot be separated from Uncle A. So this is a little bit of story about some memory I had with my childhood. So I don't know about you guys, but somehow my most vivid memory about my childhood is always painful. Not that I had a horrible childhood, I have a happy childhood. It's just that I think those kind of stick a little bit longer. So first thing I remember about my Uncle A was he was very, he liked to fiddle with stuff. He always had a little bit of puzzle on the desk. He always tried to fix things around the house. And he has very thick glasses. And then it's a very kind of a nice portrait that's imprinted in my head about him. And this story is kind of about that. So the first story about him is it was my first memory of a beach trip. I was about 3-year-old. It's the first time I've ever seen the beach. It was a long ride, and we got to the beach. It was my family, Uncle A's family, it's the whole gang. It's the first time, some people already heard the story, by the way. I was on the beach, I was a 3-year-old, mind me, and first time I looked out into the ocean, okay, and I was just overwhelmed, you know. I was looking at the vast body of water and endless towards the horizon. And the crest of the waves, the breeze of the wind, I just feel so small. I don't know how that thought popped into a 3-year-old, but I just felt so insignificant. And as a result, I feel like a whole weight of pressure being lifted on my shoulder as a 3-year-old. I don't know how much pressure I was on at that moment. So the only thing I wanted to do at that moment was just to let go. I don't know what I was letting go of. But I just extended my arm and decided to fall flat back onto the beach. So you see, that's a very sort of relaxing moment. Little beknownst to me, right behind me was a sea of Cactus Plant. So I fall butt first into a cactus plant. And I wasn't screaming because I feel like it might be poisonous, I don't know, but my butt wasn't feeling anything. So that was the most embarrassing moment of my childhood. Basically, my parents and my Uncle A and then his wife spent the entire afternoon picking needles out of my ass. But my Uncle A was the one literally doing it with a tiny little tweezer because he has the steadiest hand and whatnot. I don't know, he was doing it and he was very concerned. So the entire afternoon he was doing that. And everybody, 4 adults looking at it. So that was my first memory of him. That was fun. My second memory of him, or the second aspect I remember of Uncle A is he was very wise. And he was a scholarly figure that he always read. He always read the news earlier than everybody else, back when there wasn't even any internet. And then he always had this progressive ideas that I don't know where it come from in a modern city in China. So I remember one day, my dad learned how to do authentic Armenian BBQ from real Armenians who live in Siberia. And my dad was a big fan of it, and it was quickly become very popular in the household. So we always host this Armenian BBQ at my dad's company, always in the parking lot. It was a kind of a whole party thing. So if you have never tried Armenian BBQ before, it's a very heavily pork-based kind of a dish. I remember one Sunday afternoon, we were having this barbecue with every single employee in my dad's company. My dad and Uncle A was grilling on the grill, and Uncle A has a very rebellious son. At that time, it's just about hitting puberty. So he's at his full righteous kind of moments where he thinks he knows everything, and whatever he thinks is right. And one of the employees at a company is actually a Muslim. So he was waiting for the first round of barbecue where the pork was cooked, so that it's empty so he can cook some other type of meat where he can actually eat. So he was smoking a cigarette by the parking lot waiting for his turn. Uncle A's son was very pissed at that. He thinks, why can't you enjoy other people's work, just like the rest of us did? So he grabbed a plate full of pork and walked straight up to him and said this. He said, "Would it kill you if you tried pork?" Yes, it was a dead silent. The entire parking lot went from party to not in about 3 seconds. And my Uncle A has never raised his voice against anyone. He's a very, very quiet person. He doesn't even listen to music most of the time when he's studying. He walked up to his son and shouted the loudest word he can say. He said, nobody should be disrespected because they're different. Uncle A's son was not allowed to participate any more Armenian barbecue until he agreed to apologize. I had the fortune to travel quite a few countries due to my study and due to my work, and that word always sticks with me when I meet people that are different. The third aspect of my Uncle A is that he's unfortunately depressed. So back when the business is good, my dad and Uncle A are living the high life, but at some point, a bad business decision leads to another. Their company went under. And Uncle A took it really hard. He was immediately diagnosed with clinically depressed. He was taking antidepressant, and his health took a nosedive. And my dad tried to pick him up by saying, why don't we start another company? I put in a little bit more, you put in a little bit less, and we can get you back on your feet. And they did that. But unfortunately, my Uncle A's depression got a little bit too severe, and it became very self-destructive. There were quite a few suicide attempts, and as a result, he didn't agree to invest in anything of any kind of risk and therefore reward, and the company was not profiting. My dad, my family, and their family are both digging into the savings. So my dad has to, after one particularly bad business deal, my dad decided to break it off. And that's the last time I ever heard from my Uncle A. Years later, I was asking my dad, do you hate him for dragging the company into the mud? And he told me a story I never heard before. He said, when you were 5-year-old, we went on a road trip together, 9-hour drive. He was sleeping in the back seat against the door. Uncle A told me, he said, pull over right now, quietly, don't alarm anyone. It turns out the door I was leaning against is not locked. He grabbed me a split second before I fall off a car running 100 miles an hour. That's the emotional and physical scar I remember about Uncle A. And my dad never resented him because he literally saved his son and made me who I am. Thank you.